Hey, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Lakers on YouTube. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Friday afternoon, the Lakers again making news heading into the holiday weekend. Shams and others reporting that as soon as DeAndre Jordan clears waivers, which we think he will, he is going to sign a one-year, $2.6 million deal with the Lakers. That's a veteran's minimum contract. Andy, adding to the collection of centers that the Lakers have. I have a lot of questions about this move, but let's start with just DeAndre Jordan. Is he still good?
I think it depends a lot on what you want him to do. If you want him to go out and dunk, he is still good at that. To put it in perspective, he had 190 baskets last season for the Nets. 137 of them were dunks. So that is an awfully large percentage of doing one thing offensively, and he was very effective. He was 85% on alley-oop dunks, 73% on alley-oop layups, 92% on cutting dunks. So he is somebody that you theoretically
He's a dunker.
could
I think
set
he's got
up
more dunks than any player active in the NBA right now. So there's that. Look, I mean, Jordan's been statistically a negative offensively for half a decade now. That's not surprising. I think where fans might be a little bit more surprised, he was catastrophically bad for Brooklyn last year as a defensive player, which is part of the reason he did not play in the playoffs. He literally didn't play.
Yeah.
And so, he became obviously very expendable. If you go back a couple years, the season before in Brooklyn, he wasn't as bad on defense. So the Lakers could look at this and say, with the right scheme, with the right players, and the right support, he can be an effective defensive player, but he is not what he used to be. That much, I think, is fair to say. And I think even Jordan would agree with that. So with that in mind, how much I like or dislike this move really depends on what comes next. It seems to mean that Marc Gasol is probably going to be gone in one form or another, whether Gasol doesn't want to be there or the Lakers don't want him there. It doesn't look good in that regard. And if I can choose between those two guys, Marc Gasol is a much better and more useful player for this team than DeAndre Jordan is. He is a floor stretcher on offense, and he is a better defender than Jordan on defense. So I don't like that exchange straight up. But if you told me that this means that Anthony Davis is going to play much more five, maybe even start at center, we spent a lot of time talking about this on Friday's show, then to have Anthony Davis with more traditional centers like Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan backing him up, that doesn't bother me so much.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like some wish casting on your part.
Because absolutely, it's 100% wish casting.
There's been absolutely no indication in the reporting in terms of this, and obviously there's a lot that still needs to play out, that is actually the Lakers' plan. Like, on the surface, it feels like this sets up Anthony Davis to actually play at the power forward yet again, and you have two sort of nominal classic fives in the mix.
It could.
Well, again, without any indication of what you're talking about being actually the case, I have to assume that one of these two guys is ultimately going to be starting for this team when you've got two.
In your scenario, they're recreating the 2019-2020 model as much as they can with athletic, above the rim offensively, guys who can put dunks down, catch lobs and things like that, and are rim protectors, at least in theory. Dwight, I think, gets a lot more respect in that than Jordan does at his point in his career, but in theory, they are both rim protecting centers.
DeAndre Jordan, I think, can still block shots at a decent rate. Like if you look at cleaning the glass, he's in the 76th percentile for block percentage, so he can still do that. I think the issue with him is if he cannot block a shot in terms of his defensive utility on the court, on a particular possession, whatever, the floor drops pretty precipitously.
Yes.
Like there's not much else that he does. Like if you think Marc Gasol had some issues getting switched in space defensively on a pick and roll, I feel like you probably ain't seen nothing yet.
It's just
compared to DeAndre.
Gasol is a better defender. Gasol is a much better defensive player than Jordan is overall. Both in rim protection, not shot blocking, but rim protection, which has more than one form. And then the other thing that just would bother me about that setup is I think in 2019, 2020, you had Avery Bradley starting at the point instead of Russell Westbrook. Very different players in terms of what they do offensively, shooting, where their baskets are going to come from, and having somebody like Dwight or DeAndre Jordan standing in the lane it's a different deal. And so it's not the same team. We will have a lot more about this for Tuesday's show. We're going to take the holiday Monday off. Maybe some little more information coming out between now and then. But overall, some big questions, I think, are honestly raised by a veterans minimum buyout signing. The Lakers once again dipping into the waters of big names that people have heard of.
Yeah, I tweeted out at Cam Brothers, the Lakers roster is basically the basketball version of classic rock. And like, not even just the idea that these guys are older. It's classic rock is a genre where you go for familiarity, you go for names, you go for the hits. And this roster is made up of a lot of playable hits. It should be noted, by the way, classic rock ain't all bad. A lot of it's very popular for a reason. It's had longevity for a reason. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's negative, but this is definitely
what it is.
Taking care of business version of a basketball roster.
I think we should figure out which Laker we're going to call the Space Cowboy and which one we're going to call Maurice. We'll do all that. We'll do all that next week on Locked On Lakers. Everybody, enjoy your holiday.